Hi guys, welcome back to my channel once again. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching you how I made this blouse, that is the sewing tutorials. I already have the pattern drafting on my channel. So let's get started. I'm using a lining, an Ankara fabric, and then bridal satin for these tutorials. First thing I'm going to be doing is to lay my patterns on my fabric and then cut out. Note, you are cutting on a single fabric. You don't fold the fabric into two, okay? Since both front and back are asymmetric, so you don't have to fold it into two, otherwise you'll get excess fabric you cut out without using, okay? So for the center piece and the side piece where I'll be joining, I added 1/2 inch seam allowance. That is this side, and then on the side and then the center back I added 1 inch seam allowance. Take note of that, okay? So the upper and then the lower part as well, I added 1/2 inch seam allowance to that part. So this is it. You can see I have my 1/2 inch seam allowance in between. The center back has 1 inch seam allowance. The side has 1 inch, and wherever I'll be joining has 1/2 inch, and then the upper part as well has 1/2 inch seam allowance, okay? To be on a safer side, you can add 1.5 seam allowance to the side, but then 1 inch seam allowance is okay. That is basically it. So what I'm going to be doing now is to snip all the parts with line. That is the chest, the bust, the under bust, and then the waistline, okay? This is to help me join them together with ease. That is when I'm joining, I know this waist is matching this waist, and then the underbust is matching this underbust, and then the chest line is matching this, okay? So snipping always help you, or making a notch always help you join your fabrics together with ease. That is the only reason why I am making the notches, so you take note of that. So I'm going to be cutting out my lining the same way I cut out my front and then my back, okay? So you are cutting the exact thing with the same seam allowance, 1 of each. Next, I'm going to be using the soft woven interfacing to fuse my Ankara fabric, okay? So with right side of the woven fabric facing the left side of the Ankara fabric, place it on top just like I am doing. Press it down and then cut. You are doing this to all the main fabric, okay, minus the lining. So you take note of that. Another way is to fuse the main fabric and the interfacing together. Then you cut it all out at once. You can equally do it that way, okay? So this is what I have after fusing it, and I went ahead to fuse all other parts of my main fabric, okay? So like I said, you need the notches to join them together. So you can see it was very easy for me to join the waist together, the under bust together, and then the bust together. So always take your notches serious when you are joining your pieces together. That is the only way you are going to get it right. So I'm going to be showing you every process of the pinning so you get it right. And it's always advisable to pin before you sew, okay? Always pin. So I'm repeating the same thing at the other side, and after that I'll take it to my machine and stitch 1/2 inch on both sides. I'll be doing the same thing to the back, okay? I'll be joining the notches on the waist and then the bust line to help me join every other part. Then take it to my machine and stitch 1/2 inch. Okay, that is the seam allowance I added. So after joining them together, next thing I'm going to be doing is to open up the seams and press them down to make my work look neat and nice. Always press. Okay, so when I get to the bust area, I'm going to be using my tailor ham with the help of my iron to press that particular part as well so that it comes out nicely. Note I didn't pad this blouse because you don't always have to pad everything. Okay, I'll be using a brazier for this, so especially people with smaller breasts, you don't really need padding. Next, I'm going to be joining the lining to the main fabric by pinning. Okay, so I'm going to be stitching the upper part and then the lower part. Just watch the direction of my hand. Okay, that is where you are going to be stitching for the front. And then for the back, I'm going to be placing my lining on top of it like this, with right side facing each other. I'm going to be stitching the neckline and then the hem for this, and I'll be repeating the same thing for this side. The new chest line or the new neckline at the upper part, and then the lower part, that is the hem. After stitching, next thing I'm going to be doing is to snip it. Okay, snip to the end of the fabric, the end of the seam, but make sure you are not cutting through. Okay, this will help you turn with ease and without fabric showing or the lining showing at the front part of the top. Okay, so I'll be doing the same thing to the back neckline or the neck area as well before I turn it out. So I went ahead to mark my side seam allowance over there on both sides. I'm going to be joining the back to the front. Okay, so just watch how I'm placing it on top of it so that you don't get confused. Okay, so the lining is facing the lining, and what I'm going to be doing is to pick it on the side. Okay, this is the back and then the front. Okay, so with right side facing each other, make sure the lining is facing the lining and then the Ankara fabric is facing the Ankara fabric, and then pin them together, making sure the seams are meeting. Okay, making sure the seam lines are meeting when you pin. So I'm going to be pinning the upper part and then the lower part, that is the hem, to enable me join the other parts together with ease. Okay, so just watch what I'm doing and you understand. So at this point, I'm going to be pulling the lining out. Okay, otherwise I might pin it together with the main fabric. So I'll be pulling the lining to the other side and then pin the main fabrics together on the side. Okay, so just like this, make sure you are pinning on the line. Okay, the line you marked for the side seam allowance, so that sewing becomes easy and comfortable. Okay, so I'm going to be joining the lining pieces together after joining the main fabric together. So this is basically what you are doing on this side. After pinning, I'm going to be stitching it all round. Okay, so from that side, you follow the line you marked. You're going to be stitching it all round since there's no opening at the upper or the lower part. Okay, for this side, since there's an opening at the armhole area, it's going to be easy to pin. So just open the lower part, that is the hem, and then making sure right side is facing each other, and then the lining is facing the lining, main fabric is facing the main fabric, and then the seam lines are meeting as well. Okay, you are going to be pinning everything down, following the line you marked for the side seam allowance. Okay, So just watch what I'm doing and you'll understand everything well. So after joining or pinning the main fabrics together, I'll go ahead and pin the linings together, take it to my machine and stitch. Okay, so I'll be stitching from one armhole to the other armhole for this particular side of the blouse. Okay, so that is it. So after joining both sides, this is what I have. Okay, I'm done with the upper part, the lower part, and then the side of my blouse. So next thing to do is to turn it out at the zip area. Okay, so you take your time and pull everything out and press. Okay, after pulling everything out, I'm going to take it to my machine and press it so that everything will lie down flat and be in good shape. Okay, so after pressing, next thing I'm going to be doing is to join the shoulder. Okay, so before I join the shoulder, I went ahead to fold my zipper extension in. Okay, 1 inch in on both sides. That is for the lining and then the main fabric as well. And then the shoulder, this is how I'm going to be doing it. Just fold it on top of each other like this, making sure the neck area is meeting the neck area and then the armhole area is also meeting the armhole area. You pin it down, take it to the machine and stitch. Okay, I'll be finishing this by neatening or overlock. Okay, so you can use your overlock stitches to finish the raw edges after you join them together by sewing. Okay, so this is what we have now for the top after joining every other part. Okay, next thing I'm going to be doing is to fix my zipper. So if you don't know how to fix a zipper, I have a tutorial on my channel. You can check it out and fix your zipper. Okay, so after fixing my zip, next thing I'm going to be doing is to make my sleeve. Okay, so I'm going to be measuring or taking the measurements of the armhole to help me draft my sleeve. So from one side to the other side, I'll go around and measure my armhole. At the end of the day, I had about 16.25 inches, and that is what I'm going to be using for my armhole measurements. So I'll be using this brown paper for my sleeve, and I'm marking my borderline by coming down by 1 inch from the top of my brown paper, and from that 1 inch I'll be marking my sleeve length, that is 22 inches plus ½ inch for stitching. Okay, next thing I did was to connect the points together like this. I'll be doing the same thing to the upper part, that is my borderline. From the borderline, I'll be coming down by 3.5 inches. Okay, so I'll be repeating the same thing on the other side and then connect the points together using my ruler to get a straight line. From there, I'll be dividing my 16.5 inches into 16.25 inches into 2, and then whatever I get, I subtract 1 inch from it. Okay, now for the wrist measurements, you're not going to be taking your wrist, you're going to be taking this particular part where your hand can enter the sleeve. Okay, if you take it at this area, that particular part won't enter the sleeve. So whatever I had, I divided it by 2 and then I marked it on both lines down there after measuring my wrist. Next thing I did was to go up by 2.5 inches from the hem of my sleeve. Okay, so 2.5 inches over there, and then I connected the points together. It was at this point I realized I have to take out the seam allowance for joining, okay, so that I can draw in the shape of the joining of my sleeve. So I came down by 3 inches again from the hem of my sleeve because of how the sleeve is shaped, okay. So from the wrist in total, I came down by 5.5 inches. Next thing is to remark my wrist measurement on this line. So that is basically it. And then at this line, you add extra 2 inches or 3 inches to your wrist measurement, and then you connect it to meet your wrist line, just like this. Next, I'll go ahead and then cancel this line out before I connect my armhole, okay. So you draw in your armhole curve just like this, and then from there you are going to be connecting it to meet the sleeve. So after everything, I went ahead to measure my armhole and I remarked it over there before connecting to meet my wrist area, just like this. So next, I added 1 inch seam allowance all round. I'll be doing the same thing to the lower part, okay. So 1 inch and then connect to the wrist. This is the upper part and then this is the lower part. I went ahead to cut it out and then divided it into 2. Next, I'm going to be folding my fabric into 2, place my sleeve on top of it this way, and then cut out, since I already have seam allowance on the side. But then at the hem or the lower part of my sleeve, I'm going to be adding 1/2 inch seam allowance over there. I'll be folding this fabric into 2 and then into 2 again, just like this, and then place my lower part of the sleeve on top of it and cut it out. In all, I should be having 2 pieces, one for lining, one for main fabric. So I'll go ahead and stitch the 1 inch seam allowance I added to the sleeve on the side, this seam allowance, okay. So I'll go ahead and stitch it on the lining and then the main fabric. For the lower parts, I'll go ahead and then join it at the wrong side and then stitch 1 inch on the side and then 1/2 inches on the lower part. So at this point, I'm done with joining them together or stitching. Next thing I'm going to be doing is to pick up the lower part, trim off the excess on the side, turn it out, take it to my machine and press it, and then show you what to do next. So this is what I have after pressing. What I'm going to be doing now is to notch this particular side of my sleeve, that is the lining and the main fabric. Fold this piece into 2 and then make a notch at the center as well. This is very important. You notice why I'm saying this when I start joining, okay. Next, I'll go ahead and notch the center of the upper part as well. So I'll be joining the notched area of the lower part of this green fabric to the side of my sleeve, okay. That is the part with the seam where I stitched the 1 inch seam allowance. That is where the center is going to be, and I'll go ahead and pin it all round. Take your time when pinning this because you are pinning on a very small surface, okay. So you make sure it's ending on the notch, okay. The green fabric is ending on the notch you made at the lower part of the sleeve, okay. Take note of that. So one side met at the notch, make sure this side is also meeting at the notched area, and then you pin it down. After pinning it down, I'm going to be pushing everything in to make sewing easy. So that is it. So this is me pinning everything in. I'll go ahead and stitch 1/2 inch all round. and then show you what to do next. After stitching my half inch all round, I'm going to pick my lining piece. Note this is the right side of the lining, okay? Right side. So with right side facing each other, I'll just pin the lining to the main fabric whilst the lower part is already stitched on top of it, okay? Sorry, whilst the lower part is already stitched inside it, okay? So I'm pushing it in at this point to make the pinning easy and less stressful for me. So I'm going to be making sure the notched lines or the notched parts are meeting, okay? So that is the reason why I made the notches, so that when I'm pinning, I don't get confused. So I'll go ahead and pin everything inside, take it to my machine and stitch on the half inch line I used in joining the green piece and then the main sleeve together. After stitching, this is what I have. I'll go ahead and then turn it out to show you what I have, okay? So this is basically how the sleeve is going to look like after you sew everything together, okay? Next thing I'll be doing is to join my sleeve to the armhole of my top, okay? So remember, I notched the center of the sleeve on the side. I'll go ahead and pin the notched area to the center. Pin it all round, okay? So that is it for the sleeve, okay? Just take your time and then pin them together before you take it to your machine and stitch. And I'll be stitching half inch seam allowance all around because I added half inch seam allowance to that area. After fixing my sleeve, this is what I have at the moment, okay? So next thing I'm going to be doing is to work on the upper part. Like I said, this side, just do overlock to finish it, okay? So what I'm going to be doing now is to open this up and measure the upper part. Remember, I made a facing in the pattern. I'm not going to be using that again. So I went ahead to measure this particular area or the upper part from one end to the other, and I had 31 inches. So I went ahead to cut out this fabric. This is my 31 inches here, and I added my round sleeve measurements, which is 12 inches to it. So 31 plus 12 inches. So whatever your round sleeve measurement is, after measuring, you add it, okay? The width of this is 11 inches. Folded into two is 10.5 inches, okay? So I turn it out to the wrong side, and then I'll go ahead and stitch half inch on both sides and show you what to do next. After joining them together, or after stitching the half inch, I'll go ahead and turn it to the right side, just like this. And then I'll be folding half inch in on both sides before I join it to my top, okay? So this is the half inch I folded in, and I'll go ahead and pin it all round, okay? So this is how I'm going to be doing the pinning. You are going to open it up, okay? open up the pressed 1/2 inch, and then you are going to be pinning it on top of the blouse. Okay, so you are going to pinning it from one side to the other side. Okay, so just watch what I'm doing. And then when you get to the side, okay, this area from the side, I came in by 3 inches. Okay, 3 inches over here. That is where I'm going to be ending the pinning. Okay, and then for the back, I'll go out by 3 inches as well. Okay, so just like this on the back, make the mark over there, and after marking, I'll go and start pinning from the zip area. So just like this, I'll go ahead and then pin it and end it at the 3 inches point I just marked. Take note of that. Okay, because we need a space where your hand will be hanging outside, since this is asymmetric or a one hand kind of blouse or top. Okay, so next thing to do is to stitch 1/2 inch all through to the end, leaving the marked areas. Next, I'm going to be flipping this on top of this like this, and then I'll go ahead and pin it down. Okay, so just watch how I'm going to pin it down so that you get what I'm doing. So pin everything down like this, making sure this one is slightly above the stitch line at the front. Okay, sorry, slightly above the stitched line showing on the lining. Okay, just to cover it up. Okay, so I'm going to pin everything down like this, and I'm going to top stitch from the right side. Okay, so from this side, I'll go ahead and top stitch in the seam all through to the other side. So I'm left with my covered buttons. Okay, this is what I used. First thing I did was to trace it out on the fabric like this, and then I'll go ahead and add about 1/2 of an inch and mark it or draw it all round it. Okay, so after drawing it out, I went ahead to cut out. After cutting out, you are going to use this one piece to cut out as many as you want. Okay, depending on how many buttons you need, okay, to get something like this. So I'll go ahead and then thread my needle, and I'm going to be stitching on the right side. Okay, so I'm marking the wrong side over here, but then I'll be stitching on the right side. Always mark the wrong side so you don't get confused. Okay, so this is how I'm going to be stitching it all round. Just pay attention to what I'm doing and you understand. After stitching, just place it on top of it like this and pull the thread out, and then stitch all round. Okay, just to secure it. So I'm going to be stitching all around so it is firm, and then I'll go ahead and cut it out. After cutting it out, I'm going to be using a lighter to finish the raw edges. Okay, just like this, and I'll be repeating the same steps to create all the other buttons I need. So this is what I have at the moment, and I'm going to be using that on my top or blouse. So after top stitching, this is what I have over here. Okay, so you're just going to fold this on top of it just like this, and then when you wear it, it will automatically fall in place. Okay, so I went ahead to measure from this point to the hem, and then I decided to make my intervals 2.5 inches. Okay, so depending on your size and then the length you have, you decide on the spacing of your buttons. Next thing I did was to use my glue gun to press my glue on the point where I want to put my buttons, and then I went ahead to place them on top of it. Since the glue gets hard easily. Make sure you do it as fast as you can before it becomes hard. I'll go ahead and place 2 buttons on this side. I didn't measure this particular side, but 1 here, and then I left about 1 inch intervals, and then I placed the other button on top of it. So at this point, I'm actually done with the blouse. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And for the side, I glued it together to prevent it from moving when I wear it. Okay, so that is it, and you can use your thread and needle for that as well. Okay, if you want me to do the beading on the blouse, leave your comments in the comment section for me to know. Don't forget to like, comment, and share my videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.